Hi, everybody. I'm Sam Gross. I lead product here at HYPR, and I'm really excited to welcome you to our update live stream. We have some cool updates that we want to share with you that we've just shipped over the last few months. And we want to talk about how they impact your response to threats that you already deal with every day and emerging ones that you may not have dealt with yet, but I'm sure you will deal with soon. First, I want to introduce the team. There's myself. I'm the VP of Product Management. I want to introduce Martin Gaicho, who's our Director of Product Management, focusing on HYPR Authenticate, and Mercedes Anders, who is our Senior Product Manager, who focuses on HYPR Affirm and Adapt. And let's talk to Martin. We have this really cool HID partnership that we launched a few weeks ago. And Martin, can you tell me a little bit more about what kinds of benefits companies can get by bridging the physical and digital identity using this new partnership and this new feature?
Thank you, Sam, for the intro. Yeah, this has been really exciting for us. We announced this new integration, this new partnership with HID Global at Identiverse this year, a couple weeks ago. I think it all comes down to basically this trend that we're seeing across organizations, and this is the realization of that actually securing your assets is not about only the securing the physical way you access to your facilities, or making sure your employees, your users have a proper and secure access to their digital resources. But in reality, it's about all that, and all that is very intertwined, right? So threats doesn't start or stop on any of those, and there's again this realization, like in the marketing, the industry, and the organizations, of that they need to protect all the different touch points across the user journey, when the user came into their office or a facility or a factory, whatever, up to when they log into the workstation and finally access their digital assets. So it's not about one or the other. Usually, traditionally, this has always been managed by separate teams, separate technologies, separate budgets, separate everything. I think now we're seeing this trend of, okay, how can we actually bridge, how can organizations actually bridge those physical and digital identities? And our partnership with HID actually allow us to move in that direction, right? And the benefit we're seeing, and the way a lot of the organizations we talk to are really excited about, is that it's twofold. On one side is this idea of that from a convenience perspective, the users can have one unique device that they can use to access both, right? And that has a lot of benefits from a user experience perspective, from convenience, what I mentioned. It also helps in terms of the provisioning processes, like the onboarding and everything. So one device can get you actually into all the different touch points and reduce a lot of that complexity. And on the other side, from a security perspective, right? Because as I was saying, also it can help have more assurance on that it's actually the same user, right? And you can correlate events. You can do a lot of things that in the past were always keep a separate and have kind of, again, their own backend systems and things all associated. So really excited about this integration. We have supported other type of devices through other vendors as well, but HID is really interested in integration and partnership. And also, just as a last note, one of the things we're seeing is that there's a lot of companies out there that have already invested into some of these technologies. So one of the things that we can incorporate, from the HYPR perspective, is the ability to leverage the devices they have already provisioned to the users and use them from a logical access perspective, and help achieve all those benefits and get all that value out of what they already have.
It's really cool how this sort of thing that once was the purview of governments and other massive organizations, now we can really let companies that have already bought some of the component parts leverage what they already have and turn that into this really futuristic view of what authentication is. But honestly, one of the first things that everyone says is, okay, but how do I know I'm giving people these credentials? It's a physical credential. How do I know that I'm giving this credential to somebody who's trustworthy? It's really easy when you're a small company and you know everybody you hire, but when you scale to thousands or tens of thousands of employees, it's no longer possible to vet every single person who you're giving this one key to the kingdom to. So Mercedes, how can companies use HYPR to ensure that the initial issuance of this one, bridged credential is truly to someone that they can trust?
Yeah, that's a great question. So with HYPR, you can do fully modular identity verification and select the level of friction or the verification steps that you prefer to have insight to on an identity prior to any credential issuance. One of the really cool trends we've saw over the past year with Affirm is the growing demand of starting that identity verification process during the applicant, before they even get to onboarding. So during the application process and interviewing process, you can inject different components of the identity verification into those workflows and redo the verification prior to the actual onboarding itself. So you have many opportunities to check that that individual is who they say they are throughout the entire applicant interviewing and onboarding process. One of the cool enhancements we added for that onboarding specific process or workflow is the OFAC checks. So being able to do a risk assessment on whether that individual is found on the OFAC list, the anti-money laundering list, or many watch lists out there.
That's super important. I have some friends who spend a lot of time thinking about how they can make sure that everybody they onboard isn't on some sort of watch list, because that's their one metric that they care about, HR and recruiting folks. That is a really great point in time check, but it's a point in time check. It's when this person is first interviewing or onboarding or at some point in the interviewing through onboarding process. And it takes care of some of the big types of insider threats that we see today. But how can companies make sure that people aren't handing off the credentials, 2 or 3 weeks into their employment, or make sure that they are continuously re-verifying whether or not these employees are who they say they are? So you don't have this, oh, I got the laptop, mail it to somebody else and they can do my job for me.
Yeah, another great question. So there's a few ways to approach re-verification with HYPR. And the first one we'll talk about is the help desk use case. So the beginning of this year, we also released another new solution where we introduced an application for help desk agents to be able to sign in and invoke a identity verification workflow directly to the individual they're interacting with prior to providing support. So this allows you to perform that identity verification on the many different factors that you can choose from. And the help desk agent can see those results in real time. Therefore, that's one way to, in an ongoing way, check that person's identity verification prior to them, requesting new access or, resetting a password or regaining access to a system when a lost device. We all lose our devices. So if they ever were to lose their device. The next way you can think of re-verification happens in conjunction with our Adapt product. So you can set and manage different policies for that re-verification. One of the ways that we do it internally at HYPR is on a time-based schedule. So every 2 weeks, all of our employees go through the identity verification process and have to clearly state they are who they say they are, and nothing has changed over their time of employment with HYPR. So you can do those time-based policies, for example, or as I mentioned, that you could do it on a new access request, or say you're monitoring for certain behavioral metrics or, geofencing, for example, an individual is outside their expected location. Well, then you could then trigger a verification workflow to be spun up, and that individual has to go through it before they're able to gain access to the system.
Those are all really cool ways. I love some of these use cases where it's like, oh, we'll run the identity verification at a specific, when a specific condition is met, and there's lots of ways that our customers have come up with to when we're concerned whether or not someone is the right person, let's just spin up an identity verification. And that's exactly, and then that is linked very clearly in the end user's mind, the person who's actually going through verification, to an action that they've taken. That, oh, okay, I see exactly why they're verifying my identity. But we read about breaches in the news all the time. What would a company? How could you use a firm, sort of post breach, right, where you're no longer sure that anyone's trustworthy, and you're Fox Mulder, and you have decided to trust no one?
Sure. Well, in those cases, you can do something called the Affirm Identity Audit, which is another fun use case we started supporting this year. So that allows you to set a baseline, and basically you get to pick and choose. Do you want your entire workforce to go through it? Do you want specific departments to go through it? But you'll basically, without the need for all the complex integrations and the extra overhead of managing these audits, we send out a verification workflow to every individual that you indicated needs to go through the verification process, and we provide a report back to you and your organization to kind of check in on everyone, set that baseline, and get an idea of the actual identities behind the digital identity. And you can do that as many times a year as you want. Do it every other year, but just a good way to set the baseline, have the ongoing verification through other use cases that we support, and then do spot checks as you need with additional audits.
Yeah, I think sometimes after there's a breach, you don't want to shovel the muck and find out what secrets are left inside, but it's a really nice way to get assurance that you have in fact gotten to a remediated state, some sort of known good state that you can then build on as you recover from something terrible happening. And one thing we have to acknowledge with all of this discussion about we're going to do identity verification pretty regularly, or ask people to authenticate using technologies that they may not hold trust with those users, that they're handing their personal data or other information over to an entity that they are comfortable giving that information with, or that they've worked with before. I think both of you have some updates to share, if I'm not mistaken, on like how we can make the HYPR products feel more familiar to your end users, to whatever organization you're deploying within.
Yeah, I can speak for Affirm first. So Affirm's a big one where you have to establish trust before the end user is willing to interact with it. We're asking them for such personal information about themselves, asking them to capture a picture of their ID, identity cards, and give us a picture of themselves. So it's pretty private. So that trust element is so important, and we do that by allowing our customers to brand and customize the experience to meet their own standards and establish that trust that, hey, their employee is dealing with a company approved and sponsored, and just like a tool that belongs to the company I work for, and that it doesn't feel suspicious to be providing the details of my person to that system.
Yeah, 100%. And from the authentication perspective, we have also kind of supported this notion of branding for a long time. That every like phishing training, always one of the points is you shouldn't be like authenticating to something that you are not familiar with or that don't belong to your organizations. Branding, being able to like add your own like identity and look and feel and everything to the authentication solution is definitely one of the pieces to establish that trust with the end user. So that's been something that we have supported from a HYPR Authenticate perspective for a long time. One of these we are adding recently in the latest release is the ability to also have these same branding and customization capabilities also cross-platform in this case in our Mac solution, Mac-based solution for desktop. So that gives us like a completely coverage to make sure that organizations can apply that. And also, in addition to the trust piece, I think is also important also from a corporate identity perspective. So a lot of organizations want to make sure that their employees are having like a unified, consistent experience across all the apps that they use. So that's also another piece of it. Happy to also support that use case across cross platform in this case.
Yeah, that's a really great point. I hadn't even really considered about the fact that we spend all of our time on phishing training, saying don't give anyone your credentials, and then make often the actual experience of sharing your credentials or logging in is in a branded experience that is totally separate from the actual company that somebody works for. It's some third-party vendor that they may or may not spend a lot of time working with or being familiar or are not very familiar with. That's sort of a good place to stop and really sort of wrap up what we've talked about today. We have a bunch of really exciting updates. We're bridging digital and physical identity. We've enhanced our Affirm product, our identity verification product, to help prevent fraud and increase your level of compliance. And we've brought some useful updates to how you can brand the user experience and build further trust with the people that you're asking to use HYPR at your workplace. I do want to take a brief moment to point out that it's not just the three of us who build HYPR. There's a whole team of engineers, QA folks, customer service and support folks, and product marketers who help us bring HYPR to you from the entirety of our company. So I want to make sure that I thank them for their hard work in shipping these updates. And we have some more exciting features planned for the next few months as well. So we're really excited to ship those, and we'll see you in a few months to talk more about them when they're ready to go. Thanks for coming today and spending a little bit of your afternoon with us, and hopefully we'll see